Okay, we're rolling.
All right, this is an interview at Jefferson Ferry Center in South Setauket, New York. It is the 4th of August, 2004, approximately 2:30 p.m. Interviewers are Wayne Clark and Mike Russert. Could you give me your full name, place of birth, and date of birth, please?
Okay, my name is Ed Ufier, U-F-I-E-R, born in New York City, on the east side of New York City, in 1919, January 8th, 1919. After that, we moved to South Jamaica in Queens, and after that to South Ozone Park, and after that I was enlisted into the Air Force.
Okay. Could you tell me your educational background prior to entering service?
Yes, basically it was just a high school education, and then I went into the to the City College of New York, basically to get 2 years of college credit so that I could get into the Air Corps. That was the reason for it. And in addition to that, I went to the New York Stock Exchange Institute, where at the time I was working for the New York Curb Exchange as a page on the floor of the Curb Exchange.
Okay. Do you remember where you were and your reaction when you heard about Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I remember very well. I was shaving, and I was working at a defense plant in Massachusetts, but I was home at the time. And when it happened, I was shaving. I heard it over the radio, and of course, we all had the same reaction. And although I was able to get a deferment, I chose to enlist.
What kind of defense industry were you working in?
I was an internal grinder for a machine shop in West Springfield, Massachusetts. They were making turbo parts for the Air Force.
How long did you work there?
Oh, I would say just about a year.
Now, why did you decide to enlist?
Well, because as I said, I wanted to get to the Air Corps anyhow, so this was a good time to do it.
Did you ever fly before?
No, because I didn't have the education background. They required 2 years of college to get into the Air Corps.
I thought maybe you'd gone up on a flight or something with somebody at one point. I know a few
Why I
of the
wanted to
fellows-
get into the Air Corps?
Yeah.
Very, very simply. When I was about 10 years old, a neighbor of mine took me to Brooklyn to Floyd Bennett Field, an open cockpit airplane, and this pilot did all kinds of acrobatics, spins, and everything else, and I decided that was for me.
Now, did you take a ride in the airplane?
Oh
or
yes, I was
you
up
did?
there. We were over
Oh, you
Coney
were?
Island. We were over Coney Island, spinning and looping and everything.
So you really liked that?
Oh, that was for me.
Okay. All right, so you enlisted in April of '42. Where did you go for your training?
Well, after being a private, we went to Maxwell Field as an aviation cadet.
Okay.
And after that, after I got out of that, I went to pre-flight training in Helena, Arkansas, pilot training, from which I washed out of pilot training.
Did you get a chance to solo?
No, I didn't. I washed out before then. It's a little story. The instructors at that time were not too pleasant. They're all civilians and not very pleasant people. And as we were flying, it was a PT-19 two-seater, and the instructions were, as we were flying, if you have the flight, you use your stick. It was a stick operation. If I have it, I'll knock your knees and say that I have it. Well, coming in for a landing, he knocked my knees, so I let the stick go. And he didn't have it, and I didn't have it. So he landed about 10 feet, crashed into the thing. After that, he washed me out. My acrobatics were perfect. I could loop, spin, everything, but landing was my problem. So he washed me out.
So where did you go from there?
We was transferred to Nashville, Tennessee, to navigation school.
Okay. Now, did you work with the Norden bomb site?
No, never knew it existed until later on in Guadalcanal, where I got instructed using the Norden bomb site. But we was just strictly navigators at that time, not bombardier navigators.
Okay, so you didn't work with that at all until you got
Until
up to
later
the
on.
Pacific. Okay. What kind of things did you learn at the navigation school?
Well, we learned flight training, of course, and use all the instruments, the celestial navigation, dead reckoning, so forth. So they taught us all the computer, little handheld computer, which is long gone by now. And we had many flights of instructions.
Now, what kind of planes did you fly with?
It was an AT-7. It was a two-engine plane, held about maybe 10 navigators.
Was everybody trying to navigate at once?
Yes, we had different drift meters and so forth and so on. But it did drift, wind shift, wind drift, and of course in celestial navigation you only could do one at a time because they had a dome where you had to look.
How'd you do with the sextant?
But the section, pretty good, yeah.
Okay. Where did you go after Nashville?
After Nashville, they asked for volunteers we graduated in June of 1943. And at which time I got married, and they asked for volunteers to go overseas immediately. And I volunteered to do that. And the volunteer that we ended up doing was taking C-47s. I was put into a troop carrier squadron and flying C-47s over to the Pacific. So after I got married, we had about a week's honeymoon or so, and then in August we flew overseas. And the strange part is that the biggest body of water where we ever flew over in training was the Mississippi River. And here we were faced with we're flying over the Pacific Ocean to Hawaii.
That was the route you took, Hawaii and then to the Philippines? Or?
Well, we went from Hawaii, which took 15 and a half hours,
Mhm.
and we landed in Hawaii, then we had to island hop to get to Australia.
Okay.
We went to Fiji, Samoa, New Caledonia, Fadi, different island hopping.
Now, after you arrived out there, were you eventually signed to a bomber unit?
No, before we got there, we had an incident.
You were, okay.
We were flying from New Caledonia to Brisbane, Australia, with our C-47, and I guess about 3 or 4 hours away from Brisbane, both of our engines quit because the pilot didn't transfer the fuel from the tank in the cabin to the engines, and both of our engines quit. We were flying at 8,000 feet and started to go down. We kicked out all of our equipment that we were carrying and ready to ditch. And then about 500 feet above the water, using the wobble pump, which was a pump, the engines got gasoline and it got fuel, and we were able to start our engines. But all that stuff that we carried all this time just went into the Pacific Ocean. So that wasn't a very auspicious beginning for my flying.
Now, what unit were you assigned to in the Pacific?
Well, the 5th Air Force. It was the 5th Air Force. We flew into Brisbane and then onto New Guinea. And a memorable occasion there was I got to see General MacArthur several times. During one time we had an air raid for the Japanese, and I guess he went to one foxhole and I went to another one, but anyhow, I remember doing that.
Now, what unit were you with the 5th Air Force?
Well, as I say, I was in a troop carrier unit, and then I stayed there and I became an instructor, navigation instructor for new crews coming over in B-24s and B-25s. And while I was waiting, they had us do courier work, flying strike photos to General Kenny in Brisbane, which was part of my job. And I got to meet General Kenny too. And after that, I flew a we had instructional missions at B-24s and B-25s, bombing targets along the New Guinea coast. And after that, at which time I was finally transferred to the 13th Air Force in Guadalcanal.
Okay. So you were assigned to a B-24 there?
Mm-hmm.
Had the crew been together?
Well,
or
no.
was this a new crew?
We were just waiting for a crew to be assembled. And finally, when they assembled the crew, we went to, I think we flew to Admiralty Islands. This at Guadalcanal is where I was instructed to using the Northern bomb site.
Oh, okay.
They had us do some bombing, and it was fun, but I never got to use it again.
Now, did you use the same aircraft all the time, or
No,
did you
no.
use a variety of...
In fact, I didn't have a real steady crew for practically all the time I was in the Pacific. After several missions or with one crew, I ended up being a lead navigator, and that meant that I would have to change planes and crew. So we flew, most of our missions were real long missions, from 7 to 12 hours. And our roughest mission was flying from the Admiralty Islands to Truk, where we had no fighter cover, and we normally encountered at least 100 Zeros when we were flying over the target. Our losses were tremendous. So there was a rough mission to perform.
Did your plane get shot up at all?
No, luckily, no. I was very fortunate that way.
Any flak damage or anything?
No, not at our plane. Not any plane I ever flew in.
Did you fly on any aircraft that was named or had any kind of nose art or, pictures painted on the side or anything?
And I don't understand.
On any of the aircraft you flew on,
Yeah.
were any of the planes decorated with names or?
Oh
any
yes,
kind of-
we had a name.
What was the name of your plane?
Oh, as I say, I flew in several.
Uh-huh.
They had several clever names, but I had pictures of some, but I didn't take it with me.
Do you remember any of the names?
Maisie Dotes was one.
Okay.
I flew on a Maisie Dotes. No, really, I don't.
Now, did you ever wear a flak jacket
Oh,
when
yes,
you were in your
uh-huh.
flights? You did?
Wear not only a flak jacket, we had a helmet, flak jacket on a floor,
Okay, right under you.
Yeah.
Yep.
and of course the helmet.
Now, did you wear the heavy flight suits being in the Pacific, or?
No, we wore just a jumpsuit, that's it. And we had leather jackets because it got pretty cold
Right.
after 15,000 feet.
So that's what you flew mostly at 14, 15,000?
Well, getting to the target, we flew about 14,000, and over the target, we flew at about 18,000.
Now, the majority of your missions then were bombing Japanese bases and so on?
Mostly airfields and shipping. And when we bombed shipping, we were instructed to fly at about 9,000 feet, which was like almost suicide.
So you didn't do any skip bombing then, I take it?
No, that would be 24.
Okay.
Now, in your paper that you sent in to us, you said that you were more afraid of the weather. What did you mean by that?
Well, normally we flew, we had to go through two fronts. And of course these fronts were, our maximum altitude, as I say, was 18,000 feet. But we couldn't get over the weather. And it was so rough sometimes that it was normal for us to bounce 5,000 and 6,000 feet. And we had 48 airplanes in the same area. And oftentimes we'd see one cross right in front of us. We all lost into in the weather. And then we had to look forward to this coming back also. That was everyone said, the distance, the weather, and the lease were the Japs.
Now, you said you weren't particularly happy with living in the jungle. Did you live in tents?
Oh yes, we lived in tents.
What didn't you like about jungle living?
Flies, ants, fleas, mosquitoes,
Snake-
weather, rain.
Snakes or scorpions?
What?
Snakes or scorpions?
No, there's no snakes. There's scorpions, yes.
Okay.
No snakes in all of the Pacific we were.
What about tropical diseases, dengue fever
Luckily,
or malaria?
we were all subjected to mostly dengue fever, malaria, scrub typhus. Luckily, I got none of that.
Did you turn yellow from the malaria pills?
Oh yes,
Now, it said you received a special accommodation from MacArthur.
Yes,
What was that for?
It was for one of the longest missions ever performed in the Pacific, which is about 18 hours going to Balikpapan, which were oil fields in Borneo. Balikpapan is a town in Borneo, and that was one of the longest missions ever performed.
How many missions did you fly totally?
Well, I got 39 missions with 500 combat hours. That's not accounting all the instructional missions that I did. So that accounts for the more hours, for the 500 hours.
What rank did you rise to?
I ended up as second lieutenant. I mean, first lieutenant.
Okay. Did you get to see any USO shows while you were over there?
Yes, we saw Bob Hope, Randolph Scott. I think that's the only two. Most of the places we went, they wouldn't want to go to anyhow.
You said that one of the things that most unusual duties, you talked about another B-24 going down. Could you talk about that, please?
Okay. We're coming back from a mission to the Philippines, and luckily I had a pilot. This was when I had a steady crew who was able to conserve fuel very, very well. Coming back, we saw this B-24 run out of fuel, and they ditched, and they bailed out, and they're all floundering in their life jackets. We had life jackets also, but they had no
The life belt or boat
No,
rafts?
for floats.
Floats.
Yes. So we spotted them, and our pilot circled around, and we all gave up our floats to drop them to the guys that were down. And we were enough to save 7 of them out of the 10. The other 3 were, we radioed, I don't know if I wrote that down, we radioed back to base and the PBYs came to pick up these fellas, and of course, I guess you're not familiar with it, but it's very difficult to see anybody down in the water when you're flying 15, 20 feet above. So we spotted them with my radio contact, and they were able to pick up 7 of them.
You also mentioned in one of the missions, the Leyte, you sunk a Japanese troop ship?
Right. That happened on November 2nd in Omak Bay, right after they landed in Leyte Gulf. And Omak Bay was the opposite side of Leyte Gulf. That's where the Japanese had all their troops and shipping assembled. And this one particular mission that we did sink the ship, it was like a TV performance. I think we had about 100 of our fighters, and they had about 100 of their fighters. And all over the sky were just dogfights all over. And as we lined up for the bombing run, we have to stay 60 seconds on a bombing run with the control in the bombardier's hands, and you have to just stay that way, and that's where the fighters try to shoot you down. Anyhow, we had 8 1,000-pound bombs that walked right down to this troop ship, and as we flew by it, we saw it explode, and it was, I guess, 8 or 10,000 Japanese troops on that ship. It was later documented in the journals that it was sunk at that time.
No, the ship was moving?
No.
Oh, okay.
Did you recall the name of the ship?
No. I might be able to look it up. I don't recall.
Okay.
Those things really didn't matter,
Right.
Just to get back safely. That was the main thing.
Yeah. Right. Now you mentioned here also that you thought the chaplain on the one base that you were was probably one of the persons you remembered the most.
The what?
The chaplain.
Chaplain? Oh yes, That was a Morotai. He was instrumental in saving many lives. As I said, we had a lot of losses, and many of the losses were ships taken off and not making it, exploding or catching fire, and he would normally go in and try to pull out whoever he could. And eventually I heard that he did one, and the ship exploded and killed him.
Do you remember his name?
Not at all, no.
Okay. All right. Now, when did you end up going back to the States?
It's September of 45.
Do you recall hearing about the death of President Roosevelt when you were out in the Pacific?
Did I recall the...
The death of President Roosevelt.
Well, I was home when he died.
Oh, you were home. Okay, okay. You said September.
April 13th, I think he died.
Yes.
I was home then.
Oh, okay. Do you remember your reaction to that?
Not really, no.
How about the dropping the atomic bombs?
Oh, that was a blessing. I was then stationed in Hondo, Texas, getting ready to go back overseas in B-29s. So when that bomb was dropped, that was very...
Did you train in B-29s?
No, we were just doing ground training, cruise control training. I was being taught it, and right before we got to start to go over, the war ended.
How did you like the B-24?
Well, outside of its leaks and everything else, it was a good airplane. It flew long distances, took a lot of beating. We had planes come back, one tail. And speaking of weather, one B-24 was so severely hurt by the weather that the fuselage bent. That's how terrible this weather was, these updrafts and downdrafts.
Now, when were you discharged?
When? September 45.
Okay. Did you ever make use of the GI Bill?
No,
How about the 5220 Club?
no.
No? Okay. Did you ever stay in contact with anyone that served with you?
Still do.
You do?
There's one I was sworn in with that lived in Hempstead, Long Island, We still see him. And there's one that, they're all navigators. One is in Washington, who now has Alzheimer's disease. Another one in Monroe, Louisiana, where I went to navigation school. Why didn't put that in, Monroe? After Nashville, I went to Monroe, Louisiana, where I graduated as a navigator.
Do you ever join any veterans organization?
No,
Nations at all? None at all?
no.
Do you have is there a 13th Air Force group that meets? Or
Not really. There was not really a
association?
well-known Air Force.
Mhm.
And we just know there's a jungle Air Force, and I guess they disbanded.
How do you think your time in service changed or had an effect on your life?
That's hard to say, but I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't do it again, but I'm glad I did it. We were, of course, every mission we flew, we expected not to come back. You know, we had so many losses that we expected not to come back.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your interview.